Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to our final show of 2025. Thank goodness. Cody, what a year it was. Absolutely. I have nothing prepared for this. So we talked about maybe it's the end of the year. We'll do something celebratory at the end of the year. And do you have anything celebratory about looking back at the last 365 days of basketball?
Honestly, this is what makes it so difficult to cover the NBA. Is everyone, all the fun movie and TV podcasts and other gaming and book podcasts and everything come out. They're like, oh, here are the best things of the year, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball's different because we have like the fiscal year where it's randomly like, oh, everyone, our fiscal year ends July 1st or something like that. Our NBA season ends like in the middle of June. Like it's smack dab in the middle of a week sometimes. So you actually have to wait another 6 months before we can do the final thing. So when you ask me that, do you want me to rope in anything from 2024? Because I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the Pacers, but that's from last year, and the Pacers are not anything to celebrate for this NBA season. So that's why it just gets so difficult, Ben.
That's 2025. That's the calendar year 2025. I think the problem which you're getting at is why this is very hard to do. Basically, what happens is at the end of the year in June, when the finals end, there's so many other things going on about the season ending and who won the title and the offseason and free agency and the draft. No one stops to recap the year. So at what point do you recap the year? So maybe that is our goal for next year, if we're still around and doing this podcast, to be able to say, here were the highlights of the calendar year of 2026. But that's a great call. The Pacers, for me, one of the all-time great stories in 2025. Yeah. What else is going on? I made a mistake today. I have a confession. I made a mistake.
What was your mistake?
I opened up Reddit for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first thing I saw when I opened up Reddit was like, Kevin Durant is an elite defender. Opponents are shooting 40% when they're guarded by him. And I was like, why are every time I go to Reddit and I open one of the like the top thing is there's just some weird statistical piece of misinformation. I don't know. Hopefully people inside the thread are like, this is not a good stat for how we judge defenders, but I don't know.
So Kevin Durant's a really interesting test case for that particular conversation because there's a lot of individual smart people whom I respect quite a bit that have written a good amount or spoken a good amount about how good of a defender they think Kevin Durant is. And like, you get to the playoffs and look at how much of an impact defender he is, blah, blah, blah. Whereas like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, he gets some block shots. He's long. He can protect the paint a little bit. He's not useless defensively, but I definitely don't see him as an elite defender. But the gap between where I'm sitting and where other people are move him considerably in terms of how good of a player you think Kevin Durant is. So I actually wonder, like, do you think that that's maybe the biggest gulf in terms of player valuations that we have for any specific player, especially any modern players?
I'm thinking of Kobe making all those all defensive teams. And I think there's something to having an army of keyboard warriors on the internet who really try to sort of prop up a player's case without being very intellectually honest about it, combined with players having certain strengths defensively. I mean, Kobe started his career as a very good, very, very good perimeter defender, and he could still lock down, and he's had really good understanding of team concept in the playoffs. So if you looked and focused on that, your takeaway is, hey, I'm going to argue and defend this side of the equation. I think it's the same thing with Durant. Durant, as a versatile, switchable defender in an era when switchability was becoming really important, was a value add defensively. And then, as you said, Cody, the rim protection. That doesn't, especially as he gets older and maybe isn't as good on ball. When he was younger, I think he could use his length better on ball, but that doesn't capture some of the warts or blind spots defensively, whether it's effort, motor, awareness, missing weak side rotations, not buying into scheme, not playing the scheme, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's got to be up there, but I think it has to be related to this sort of superstardom, sexy scoring thing that people really want to latch onto. And we probably see it with modern young players as well, where they just get the benefit of the doubt of making blocks. I don't think you and I have ever thought of Anthony Edwards as a negative defender, but he probably gets too much shine for some of the great defensive plays that he can make based on the whole highlight package.
This is great. I'm glad you brought up Edwards. I'm gonna circle, get a little bit of business speaking here. I'm going to circle back to him in just a second.
You're going to put a pin in that?
But put a pin in that, put it in the parking lot, whatever else that people are able to avoid over these couple of weeks during the holidays. But you go back to Kobe, for instance, and I feel like a big part of it is there's a discourse about how good of a left-handed blocker he was. It was a very strange thing. I almost feel like Kobe got a lot of blocks with his left hand at the rim, and he had a couple spectacular ones. I think there's one maybe in transition against Jaylen Williams, where he meets him at the apex. I feel like there's a huge swat against Kalina Azubuike at one point. Like I have these images in my head from watching all those Kobe highlights, and I think between those and the fact that he talked himself up as a huge defender as well and being a part of strong defenses, I think that raises the bar a little bit, and you kind of lose the team defense stuff where he maybe loses out on a couple of points of valuation there. So that, and then Durant, I think the other part of Durant here is people conflate rim protection and getting weak side blocks, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
I'm not saying it's not valuable. Like if you can be a weak side defender and come over and you get a block at the rim, that's extremely valuable. You're erasing a shot that would otherwise be really high percentage. But it's not the same thing as being in the paint and deterring players from going away. And that deterrence aspect of rim protection, I never necessarily saw Kevin Durant having too much of that, right? So he's good at getting weak side blocks, good at getting some of the blocks because of his length, but he wasn't turning a ton of players away from the rim with his rim protection abilities.
Yeah, I mean, you said a ton of important things there. The totality of your rim protection and the totality of your rotations is not going to be captured by block shots. So when you miss rotations, which is part of the issue with Durant, most fans don't clock that. They don't register it. They don't go, he got the last block, but this time he was standing there looking at the popcorn vendor, right? That's not what happened. So the block shot, in a sense, we tend to over-index on that and miss on the other things. Just for posterity, as we've talked about before, your defensive field goal percentage is, one, going to be heavily influenced by your teammates. Two, the reason why on this pod over the years we often talk about, and on thinkingbasketball.net, put up inside 6 feet. That's because outside shots outside 6 feet are very, very variable. They have less to do with the defender and more to do with just luck in a larger sample. So this is one of those things where I'm like, wait a second, we're regressing with our statistical literacy when we start bringing up these stats that aren't very reliable at all to talk about defense. So I don't know. That's the foot I got off on. Anything else you would like to discuss before we move forward?
Well, since it's the end of the year, we might as well give like a little semi-New Year's question that people can chew on, they can bring to their parties and whatnot, just based on the guys that we brought up here. I know it can be tough between the different eras that players play in, but who do you think is a more impactful defender, Anthony Edwards or Kobe Bryant?
Oh, Kobe Bryant. Wow. We're going to cross-generational
absolutely
reference. I thought you were going to ask me about two players playing today.
Ooh.
Kobe. Well, what year? Because I think when Kobe was at his peak, he's much better.
So let's say like not peak defense Kobe, because I don't think that's actually the peak of who Kobe is. Let's say closer to like the 2006-ish Kobe Bryant.
I think probably peak Ant. I would take. Yeah, gets that motor going in the playoffs. Pretty active, especially on ball in situations. Do you buy that?
I think I was going to say I lean Edwards in this one because he's so tricky defensively, Ben. Because when he turns it on, like he is generally destructive. Genuinely. Sorry, I'm a little foggy right now. Some of the words, as you can probably hear, are kind of being barfed out of me as I'm talking through this. But like he can get in the passing lanes. He can really like be as strong as basically anyone that's going to try and back him down and get through him. Right? He can lock up some of the best guys. But the awareness, like you talk about the popcorn vendor or like where he's supposed to be positionally, like those kinds of mistakes crop up quite a bit with him. But in terms of actual specific plays, he can be at the heart of like 11-0 runs or something like that the Timberwolves are using to fuel their transition offense. So he can be really destructive, and at times I think he's like an all-D type of defender, but the totality of what he brings to the table just isn't consistent enough for me to toss him in that category all the time.
Where are you on Anthony Edwards right now? I think he was one of the most commonly discussed players after our 25 for 25 exercise, where there's some people who just think he's right up there with Victor Wembanyama. I guess I know there's a chorus of people who think he's the sixth or seventh best player in the NBA. He's had a really good couple weeks, I think. Minnesota's starting to get that consistency thing going on that they get sometimes. They're such an interesting team, that group. Where are you with him?
Man, I mean, you go to the Nuggets game on Christmas Day, for instance, both Jokic and Edwards are on the bench. The Wolves go on a 17-0 run, right? And then the Nuggets have this huge lead going into the fourth quarter. And during that quarter, both Jokic and Edwards are on the court. Timberwolves go on an 11-0 run. And then they go to overtime, and they start on a 9-0 run.
Yes.
And then they lose, right?
And
so, like, that is just the Timberwolves, is they can go on, like, these huge runs at times, and then other times just, like, oh, my God, there's just no offensive consistency anywhere. But as for Edwards, I got to say, I put him and Jaylen Brown in kind of the same category of I'm not as confident as I would like to be about how good they are. And before I go on, I want to pause for a second and see if you have anything to say to any of that.
Yeah. Okay. So is this an archetype thing? Because we go back to our series that we did over the summer, the best 25 peaks of the 21st century. And of course, that was maybe my favorite thing we've ever done on this podcast because of all the research and philosophical concepts that we tried to apply to different players. And some players came out of that with like, hey, your movement and your spacing and your decision making without the ball, that's huge. Your ability to pass players open under the basket and create downhill pressure can offset your efficiency. We had all these themes. And then you look at the players that come out, you're like, man, you look at a lot of these archetypes from DeMar DeRozan all the way up the scale. And these guys that don't make life easier for their teammates at the rim, don't have this incredible gravity. Now, Ant actually has a little bit of gravity because of the way he plays. When I say gravity, by the way, here in this case, I'm referring to off-ball gravity. I've seen a lot of scores, a lot of gravity scores that people are trying to put out again. This was a thing like a decade ago, where when we started to get the camera tracking data, the mathematicians doing the maths were like, hey, let's come up with gravity scores. Kind of very complex thing. All that is to say, the gravity scores out there right now, I believe, take into account on-ball gravity. So you get like Luka Doncic, very, very high. I'm talking about off-ball gravity. Ant has a little bit of that. So this archetype, though, is something that is a little concerning for me. The high volume wing scorer who's not necessarily a great passer, that kind of thing, just in terms of this conversation of like, is this a top 10 player? Because I think both Brown and Ant have been very good. We've talked about Brown this season, but that's my thought. Is this an archetype thing for you, or is it more specific to the way those players are playing?
I want to say it's an archetype thing, but I don't know who else would fall into that archetype, right? Like, I think it's basically just these two guys who are maybe, if we were to say it's an archetype, are like the top tier of this specific archetype in the NBA right now. And the thing with Edwards, for instance, is over the last two seasons, 25, 26, he's averaged 13.3 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, and he's just a sliver beneath 40% from three. So like the 3-point shot, he has the volume. Like I always think if you hit 10 per 100 and you're shooting about 40%, you're a volume and like efficient 3-point shooter. So Anthony Edwards is very clearly a good shooter. He's proven he's a 3-point shooter. So that's a good part. But I wouldn't necessarily say he has like much of the Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Richard Hamilton type of off-ball gravity like you were just talking about. Like a lot of it is some of these, to his defense, very difficult pull-up shots, like the corner three he hit to send it to overtime against the Nuggets. Stand still, spot up types of attempts and things like that. It's not a lot of the like Steph Curry relocation, I'm bending the defense sort of thing. Again, that's very rare and very difficult to do, and I shouldn't be detracting away from the shooting he does. But like my point is he has 3-point shooting value, but it's not adding in the way that some of these like premier 3-point shooters are. So he's got that. He also, when he does put his head down, is just such a bulldog getting to the basket. He's so strong. He's so athletic and things like that. But then you see like he has the same Kevin Durant sorts of issues where if a defense really commits to throwing two at him on a pick and roll or just like randomly doubling him,
right,
he struggles to make the right read or right pass in those sorts of situations. And I think when that happens and he can kind of be like turned a little bit frantic, it takes a little bit away from his offensive value. So an extraordinarily talented basketball player that I really, really enjoy watching, seems to have a ton of respect from his teammates and from his opponents and stuff. Obviously, physically, he's like 99th percentile type of athlete with his strength and speed and verticality and stuff. But there are some of those things, some of the almost soft skills of basketball that I think he's missing still.
I think this is probably just the latest iteration of this conversation we have about if you're going to have these number one kind of on-ball responsibilities, what does it mean if you're not the best number one in those on-ball responsibilities? Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But I think also it would be really interesting to see him next to some of these other players that would have a lot more on-ball responsibilities. Like, what does he look like next to somebody like Cade? What does he look like in, let's say, obviously I think Edwards is better than Reeves, but if you just like threw Edwards into the Reeves position for LA, how does he exist in that sort of situation? So I would love to see him next to another high-end ball handler instead of, like we've talked about ad nauseum, in Minnesota, where it's like, hey, you're just the point guard. You're the lead initiator now. Have the ball all the time sort of thing.
You could almost say Kawhi, Brandon Ingram, players like that maybe are the current other players who kind of exist in this space of like big mid-range scorer, give them the ball. They can pass a little bit. Kawhi's weird, man. I mean, the guy had 55 points the other day. I don't know what's going on with Kawhi and the aging or age-less Clippers. I don't know. They've won 4 games in a row. Who knows what's going on in the NBA? The NBA has been so weird this year. Is this like one of the weirdest seasons that you can remember? This is what it feels like to me. It's just a very, very strange season, whereas we talked about last week, we had 9 teams for about a month and a half where we're like, we should probably adjust the standings so we can see what basketball looks like without these 9 teams that can't win a game. Now, Cody, I looked at our stats board for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. Over the last month, the Atlanta Hawks, our Toronto Raptors, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Orlando Magic, these teams are all in the tank. They all have big time negative net ratings in the last month. Meanwhile, the teams from that bottom 9 group in the last month, the Dallas Mavericks and Charlotte Hornets, are playing break-even basketball. And then the Los Angeles Clippers have a +2 net rating. Memphis, Golden State, and the Brooklyn Nets are kicking butt and taking names. Just, I can't make sense of any of it.
I can't figure out this Nets team. I threw on their Raptors game because I'm like, all right, how did they hold a team to 81 points in this our year of 2025, right? And I can't come away with any really big takeaways. They just have a very big team. I really like guys like Noah Clowney, who's playing at the 4, has some really interesting defensive chops, right? So they're big, they're physical, and I think they have a lot of what we were just talking about, rim protection. They have a lot of guys who can rotate down into the paint to deter a little bit more. So I think that's really interesting. They hold the Bucks to 82 points. I don't know if Giannis was playing that game. I'm actually pretty sure he wasn't playing that game. So I think there's a little bit of a juicing of how good their defensive rating has been over the course of the last month or so. But still, they beat the Timberwolves, holding them to 107. They beat the 76ers, holding them to 106, right? Even the Heat beat them, but the Heat only score 106 points. So I'm not really sure. I think it's almost worthy of going in and figuring out exactly what's happening under the hood here. I know they're even stranger than we thought because Cam Thomas has been out for almost 20 games at this point, right? So they've had to find offense in Michael Porter Jr., who's just a complete and total flamethrower. I don't know. That Nets team is super weird, Ben. Super weird.
Yeah, we're gonna have to investigate the Nets. If this keeps going, we will have to do a deep dive investigation. That is our promise to you, to figure out exactly what, because at a distance, I've seen a couple of these games, but at a distance, they are swarming and switching and trapping, and they got all these athletes out there, and they're 5 first-round draft picks from Europe whose names don't look like they're spelled in a different way than they should be pronounced. So you really have to watch the game to know what's going on. Yeah, they're very interesting, but all these other, I'm just saying, Cody, it's kind of a crazy NBA season right now. That's all I'm saying.
I think another part of that is if you would have told me that the Pistons would have the number 1 seed in the East right now, I wouldn't have believed you, especially if you also told me the Cavaliers were 8th in the East, right? And I'm not even saying that like I thought the Pistons would be ninth or something like that. Like if you told me 3 or 4 behind New York and Cleveland, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's a cool story coming out into 2026 is just continuing to track the Pistons. It seems like, a couple months ago when we're talking about the Pistons, that huge start that they had, they go on their big win streak and whatever else, that was real. Like this team is continuing to be very successful as we start approaching the halfway mark of the NBA season. So I think that's worthy of celebration, is seeing the emergence of Cade Cunningham, seeing I think even more of an emergence of Jalen Duren, like really starting to put it together as a big man. Ausar Thompson, obviously. Isaiah Stewart. Like, I think if we need to talk about guys that just understand their role, right? Somebody that's not going to have a ton to do with an offense or isn't necessarily like, oh, you're the key aspect of our drop defensive scheme. Isaiah Stewart just does so much for their defense, for their hustle points and things like that. And we need to appreciate more guys like that just put on the hard hat and embody what it means to be a Piston and get out there and do the work.
Cody, what did you have for breakfast today?
What did I have for breakfast? I had a blended Greek yogurt with some granola in it.
I knew there was some granola because you have some spice going on over there right now. The Piston, yeah. I did not expect you to start singing the praises of the Pistons. The Pistons are good. Mm-hmm. They're one of those teams that is going to be there, I think, all year. And for me, we're going to have to come back to them and give them the full treatment a little bit later in the year after we see how they match up against other top teams. And I mean, they've been playing other teams well. It's not to say they've had an easy schedule, but they're just a team that's good. But in the context of when we talk about title contenders and a wide open East, I really have that sort of playoff facing sort of perspective with them right now. So they're in my holding period. You know what I mean? They've been tabled, to use your business speak.
At the end of the day, though, especially if you're in the Eastern Conference, it means a lot if you can secure like that first or second seed, right? Because chances are whoever you're going to run into in the first round or maybe even the second round at that point is just not going to have the same sort of oomph as you might see in the Western Conference. So sure, you might be absolutely right, but the Pistons might be really guaranteeing themselves a berth into the second round of the playoffs if they continue going towards like, a first or second seed here. Now, of course, it would be really terrible for them if they go in there and we start the playoffs day and they have to play the Cavaliers in the first round. Like it's one of those times where it's like, oh crap, the best player on the Warriors, Stephen Curry, has been out for 40 games. Then all of a sudden you have to deal with this team coming out of the play-in tournament. But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, they're being successful in the regular season, and that's setting themselves up really nicely as we start approaching the period of time where we're going to establish some playoff scenarios.
Before we move on to the San Antonio Spurs, I want to quickly ask you, Darius Garland and that toe, how big of a factor do you think that is with the Cavs? Is he just stuck? Is this just one of these classic NBA seasons where the player's stuck on injury mode and then he'll have a comeback player of the year situation next year when he cleans that up in the offseason? Because as we alluded to, it has not been the same level. And I think that, along with a few other factors, changes on their bench, things like that, the league catching up, has really taken what was an incredibly potent regular season offense last year and brought them way, way back to the pack. And that, in many ways, Cody, is covering your, like, how can the Cavs go from whatever it was last season, 29-4 to 17-16?
I'm trying to look up some numbers here. So it looks like, okay, we got a little bit of sample size theater here, but it's the end of the year. Let's put our party hats on and celebrate whatever we can find. Garland, Mobley, Allen, and Mitchell have only been on the court together for 74 total minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You want to guess what their net rating is in those 74 minutes?
-12.
Plus 25.
Well, that's only 74 minutes. Doesn't mean anything.
So
what do I know?
If you're a Clevelander, if you're listening to the show and you're feeling a little bit blue about your Cavaliers, hang on to that. Take your hat off. Take your party hat for a second. Hang it on that hook, because you can point to that number and be like, hey, we're still here. And guess what? When Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell are on the court and Allen or Garland are on the bench, we're almost a plus 10, right? Well, that's 360 minutes.
And they beat the Spurs last night. And of course, the Spurs were, we talk about it. The Spurs are must-see TV around here. That Christmas game against Oklahoma City, I mean, Cody, I don't know what you were doing on Christmas, but I was dressed up in black and teal and orange, and I was doing the San Antonio Riverwalk dance all around my house for about 3 hours after that game, because that was not the first time the Spurs had absolutely put it on the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder. That was not the second time the Spurs had put it on the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder. That was the third time in like 2 weeks that the Spurs were just like, we will giveth you the smackdown now. We have an entire video about this on the Thinking Basketball YouTube channel that may or may not be out by the time you listen to this, but I think they're a very unique and problematic matchup for Oklahoma City, and I just think they're just fantastic to watch.
I was going to ask you the 40-foot, 100-foot view of this whole scenario.
100, you're flying low. You're flying like Maverick. You're right on 100 feet up in the air. Yeah.
Turn the clocks back. We're not doing 2.5 minutes, 2:15. We're going to get through this course. We're flying as low as possible. Can we actually take anything away from this 3-0 series that the Spurs have over the Thunder? Is there anything that's not just the hot take cycle? Is there actually like a, this is what we can learn from this halfway of the series from what we've seen between these two teams?
Do you mean about the two teams in general, or do you mean about the matchup?
Both.
Okay. The two teams in general, I don't know. I don't know yet. Because I think for the Spurs, it's a proof of concept and a stepping stone that in certain playoff settings, they could be very dangerous. But I think you and I are both probably going to give them a rookie tax in terms of, well, next time we circle back and do our power rankings, I'm not like, hey, they beat Oklahoma City. They're in the inner circle, right?
Yep. For
the Thunder, they didn't have A.J. Mitchell for the last 2 games. Jaylen Williams is still coming back and being reintegrated into the lineup. And it is, I think, a specific matchup that causes them problems. So the part 2 of that is for that matchup alone, that specific pairing, I do think it's a serious problem for Oklahoma City. The Thunder zag in one direction with the way they succeed defensively and their guards and their swarming defense. And the Spurs are just like, have you ever tried to defend 3 incredible passing ball handling players that get in the paint, one seemingly more than the next? It's like De'Aaron Fox, how does he play? Gets downhill in the paint. Stefan Castle, how does he play? He's a big ass dude who gets downhill in the paint. Have you ever met Dylan Harper? He was born in the paint. 2 feet were in there when he came out. Those guys are incredible to me.
You want to get historical for a second?
I would love to get historical, Cody. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, what kind of question is that?
I never know if you're like, save it for the post show. We can't go back in time on a real episode. That's
Cody. This is a year-end celebration, my friend. We gotta, of course, fire away. Let's go.
Okay. So you just brought up, Fox, Harper, Castle. Lots of consternation going into the season. What are we going to do with all these slashing point guards that, none of them are really great 3-point shooters? How is the spacing going to work? This would be terrible.
Spacing. You don't need spacing when you're getting layups every time.
So that's the thing. It's really interesting. So there's a big philosophical question I'm going to get to at some point. Hopefully, if I usually say that and then we just never bring it up because I forget. We talk about other interesting things. But the
Interstellar.
The only analog that I can think of is you go back to like the 2014 Phoenix Suns. I don't know if you recall, but they were running lineups of Goran Dragic, they had Eric Bledsoe, and they had Isaiah Thomas, not of the 89 Pistons.
Wow.
Right?
2014 Suns, Isaiah Thomas, Goran Dragic. Did any of those players make the All-Star game?
During that season?
Yes, correct.
Oh, wow.
I don't think so.
No, Thomas didn't. This is off the top of my head. I don't think Bledsoe or Thomas did. I thought Dragic did with Miami.
Right, but you're talking about that Phoenix Suns team. Did that team win 48 games and not make the playoffs?
Yes, that was the super stacked Western Conference when they just didn't make it.
Right.
And they had the same sort of thing where it's like, here is all of our blinding speed offensive guards that are just going to be touching the paint like crazy. You can't stay in front of any of them. Are we bleeding a lot defensively? Not with Eric Bledsoe, because he's a top-tier defensive point guard. Definitely with Isaiah Thomas. Maybe a little bit with Goran Dragic. But you just can't keep up with our pace. You can't keep up with our paint touching. And that's the only analog I can really think of in ways that a team has run an offense before.
Okay, so we have a bit of a correction from the stats department coming in right now.
Ooh, okay, good.
Okay, Isaiah Thomas was not on that team in 2014.
What year am I thinking of?
You're thinking of 2015. Isaiah Thomas was with the Kings in 2014. Then he went to Phoenix in 2015. And the 2015 Suns did have Eric Bledsoe, Goran Dragic, and Isaiah Thomas. Dragic and Thomas missed like half the season.
Yep.
And they won like 39 games that year instead of 40.
Okay.
48, excuse me.
I'm mixing up my 2 years, but there was a period
Yes.
of time when all three of them were on that Suns team. It just wasn't when they nearly hit 50 wins.
Yes. So basically where you're going is, when have we ever seen a trio of guards like this? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. My thought was, have I ever seen like how good are these three guards together? And what is the best trio of guards that we've ever seen on a team? That's where my brain was going. And I'm glad you landed on the 2014 Suns, but there were many others that I thought of historically in this question. And I want to preface this by saying, if you looked at like the top two, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, right? You can do that, but then you're really just indexing on the high-end value of the best guard or the second best guard, and you're kind of saying, we'll just throw in a third guard. It's like, what brothers in baseball hit the most home runs? The Aarons, Hank Aaron and his brother. Just to explain that joke, because I realize Hank Aaron is like retired like 50 years ago from baseball, so my contemporary baseball reference is slightly out of date. Hank Aaron had 755 home runs, and his brother had like 8. So that's the joke.
It's the same sort of thing. It's like, remember in 2006 when Kobe Bryant and Smush Parker combined for 92 points against the Raptors? Like, it's the same sort of thing. Yeah.
That would have been much better, Cody. Thank you. I should go back in time. I should get a time machine and go back and undo that. That was terrible. So
there's a couple of old heads here that are like, finally a joke that I understand with these two.
Finally, someone referenced Henry Aaron's home run record.
They're listening to this podcast on little crank radio. It's like, I love these two guys.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool. Someone listened to us on like a shortwave radio in a cabin somewhere. Hopefully there's one person
working on their turnips, just sitting on a rocking chair, just looking out on the mountains.
That would be incredible. Look, let's get back on track. I'm trying to make a point here. You can take this and interpret it one way and say, hey, you have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. It doesn't matter who you throw in there. You like Sean Livingston. That's mostly about the duo or the top end power of one or two players. Clyde Drexler in 1992, I think he was second in MVP that year. Terry Porter might have been better in the playoffs than Clyde Drexler. And then, like, who's the third player you would throw in? Danny Ainge is a really good guard off the bench. But again, that's about the power of the top end player. So I think there are pairings like that. Parker, Ginobili, pick your third guard off the bench. Brent Barry on the 2005 championship team, right? We can do that. Another one I thought of for you, Cody, was the 2022 Memphis Grizzlies with John Morant and Desmond Bane, and then Tyus Jones, who you thought was the best player coming off the bench. Luka Doncic, Jalen Brunson in the 2022 season for the Mavs, and then Spencer Dinwiddie did a pretty good job. So there's that list of players: Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, Charlie Ward, right? But I was thinking, like, who's the trio with also the really good third guard? Like, the third guy on the team is also really good. That's where my brain went historically. Where do these three Spurs guys in the backcourt stack up? And going back a couple weeks to the 2525 draft, I wanted to take 19-year-old Dylan Harper. And I think if we did it today, I think I would have picked 19-year-old Dylan Harper. I just think he's fantastic. And every couple weeks, I feel like he's getting better, because at that point in the aging curve, you're like a sponge. If you're really good, you're just soaking up every rep in the NBA, the tempo, the speed, the physicality. He has it all. I think Dylan Harper is absolutely fantastic. I looked it up. When the other two guards are on the bench, Dylan Harper's averaging 24 points per 75, 52% true shooting. So the efficiency's down, but he's a playmaker, 7.5 assists. And the Spurs are outscoring people by 13 points per 100 with a 124 offensive rating. I'm sold. That's, I think he's fantastic as a third guard right now.
No, I mean the eye test also matches it. Just you talk about getting into the paint, the ease in which he gets to the paint. Because I think if you match him up physically with Castle and Fox, he doesn't have quite the burst or the top end speed that those two guys have. He doesn't have like the vertical athleticism to get what those two guys want to do. Fox probably doesn't quite have that as much as he did a few years ago. I never necessarily saw him as like that sort of athlete as much, but he just has so much craft with the handle. And, he's got both hands. He works really well with both hands getting into the paint with a few of his little trick shots. And having all of that in your bag as a rookie, that's incredible stuff. And it's really been fun, like you said, to watch him develop, because I think he's become much more comfortable. And he's been given a lot of opportunities with Castle being out of the lineup, with Fox being out of the lineup, with Wemby being out of the lineup, and them having to rely on him and the other guards a little bit more. So it's a really cool situation where a rookie can both be on a, quotes around this contending team while also giving him a lot of space to kind of make mistakes and do whatever as lead guard. So it's a pretty fascinating test case in terms of a rookie guard being able to do some stuff out there. Another historical comparison I thought of, I don't know who the third would be, but we got to go to the early 70s Lakers for Gail Goodrich and Jerry West, right? I don't know who the third, maybe Pat Riley or something like that.
I want to shift it. They did not really have a third guard on that team as one of the key cornerstones. There was a ton of forwards and wilt and big men. The 68 Lakers had Jerry West, a younger Gail Goodrich, and all-star Archie Clark, one of the great progenitors of the crossover dribble at all-star level guard. That was some nasty guard play on the 68 Lakers. I definitely thought of them as one of the candidates. We can go to 1988 Lakers. 1988 Lakers had Magic Johnson, Byron Scott, Michael Cooper. That's not a bad trio of guards either. I'm going to say some names, and you tell me if you think the Spurs trio is better than them or not.
Okay, so before we do this and before people get really angry, I really do want that third player to be
good.
To be a little bit higher.
Yes.
Right? Like, I don't want you to, like, I think somebody in the comments wrote Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Jordan Poole. There's a little bit of a gap.
That's like one player. Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a gap.
Well,
there.
Klay missed most of the season coming off of the Achilles and the ACL in that championship season.
I shouldn't besmirch him. Actually, Poole was quite good.
He was really good in the regular season.
That playoff run. Yeah. So and not the finals. I actually think the finals were pretty rough for him off the top.
Oh, who needs the finals, Cody?
All right, sorry. Go on. Say some names.
Yeah, no, I just said Magic, Scott, and Michael Cooper.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. So here's the other difficult part is when you have like Michael Cooper out there, you actually have like guards that are doing some different things. Like you have a defensive specialist, whereas the Spurs guys, and I think it's interesting to talk about Castle as a defensive player. I think Fox has some nice chops defensively. Harper still to be determined a little bit at this point.
He can defend.
He can defend.
Yeah.
But none of them are Michael Cooper is my point. Right. And I even think Byron Scott was quite an interesting defensive player. I'd lean those. This is so tough. You have Magic Johnson.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. All right.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the third. If we focused on the weakest of that,
I'm still probably taking that Lakers trio.
Okay. Yeah. That Lakers trio is pretty good. Byron Scott never made an all-star team though.
That is shocking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Even later?
I'm fairly certain he never made
after Matt. Man, he was good.
An all-star team.
Scott.
Yeah. We can double check that in a second.
No, we can't.
we don't have the ability.
Staff's team is off for the holidays, and we actually don't even use the internet to record this.
Right? Okay. Let me give you one in your hometown, Milwaukee Bucks, 1986. Sidney Moncrief, Ricky Pierce, Craig Hodges.
Not so much.
You still like the Spurs better?
I think there's a lot of defensive bleeding with, especially like Craig Hodges. There.
This is what I'm saying. It's really hard.
It's really hard. I would take the Spurs guys over those three. Yeah.
It's really hard to get. That's why I don't like the Magic example, because it's really hard to get second and then third guards that are really, really good. And I think you can make an argument that like Castle, especially if we only focus on offense, Castle gives you a second sort of all-star level-ish type guard. And of course, the Magic, Scott, Cooper. I mean, Cooper's more of a defensive player. He's a very good passer. Played a lot of point guard for them. So that's tough. Let me give you a couple more honorable mentions, and then I'll give you my big ones that I think are the winners of the best three guards ever. The 1979 Seattle Sonics, remember them? Dennis Johnson, Gus Williams, and downtown Freddie Brown.
Man. Those top two, the top two talent there that's nuts. That is a really good duo of defensive guards. Dennis Johnson before going to the Celtics and just being, psychically linked with Larry Bird for the rest of his career. Man, it's so tough again because Harper's also a rookie, so it almost feels like offensive if I'm just like randomly taking this rookie that's played 30 games.
But also, what if he, is that good?
I think if we were to isolate the top two, I'd take that Sonics team. But if we're just looking at the third, I think I'm leading the Spurs.
Okay, I like that. I like that. The 70s historians are going to be mad at the belittlement of downtown Freddie Brown and the championship level run at the end of the 70s there from Seattle.
Watch Dylan Harper play basketball. Just do it.
Okay, couple more 3-guard teams. The 2015 Raptors had Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Lou Williams won the 6th man of the year, and the 1962 Celtics, Sam Jones, Bob Cousy, Frank Ramsey was the 3rd guard. Frank Ramsey never made an all-star game, but was a pretty good shooter and scorer. I'm telling you, it's hard to get that 3rd guard. But here's a list of teams I had that have better 3-guard lineups than what we've seen in San Antonio right now.
Hit me with them.
I mentioned the 68 Lakers. We talked about the 88 Lakers. The 1989 Detroit Pistons. Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Vinnie Johnson. Do you buy that?
God, yeah, that's going to be really hard to top.
I'm going to top it. I'm going to top it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, this one's a little bit tricky because the 3rd player, while good, is not in the same universe as the first 2 players who are like MVPs. The 2018 Rockets, Chris Paul, James Harden, Eric Gordon. And what's really funny is at some point, Basketball Reference, the Mike D'Antoni played so small that at some point, Basketball Reference started listing Eric Gordon as a small forward. I'm like, Eric Gordon's like 6'2" or 6'3". He's a guard. He's not a small forward.
If you turn back the clock like 5 years, that Eric Gordon in the 3rd spot would be incredible. But that's a really good poll. I like that one.
The audience is yelling for one of our favorites, which is the 97 Suns with Nash, Jason Kidd, and that's the Kevin Johnson trio. Yep. But that was Nash's rookie year. He was really young. It wasn't always that super fluid with Kidd and KJ at that point in their careers between youth and injury and things like that. Someone's saying, well, Rex Chapman was also on that team. I think that's a pretty good call. I think it's a pretty good call. I don't think it's quite at the same level for me as Isaiah, Joe D, and the microwave Vinnie Johnson. I don't think it's quite. I mean, the Paul Harden, Eric Gordon one's interesting, and then I'll give you my winner. I think the best. I don't know if we put together a team if they fit the best, right? I actually don't know who the 3rd best player is from this group, which makes it kind of interesting. But as far as I can tell, the only 3 guards ever in NBA history to make the All-Star team from the same team in the same year. Do you know who that is?
I don't know.
It is the 1998 Los Angeles Lakers with Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones, and a guy named Kobe Bryant.
Oof. We need to talk more about Eddie Jones on this podcast.
Should we just stop what we're doing right now and just do all Eddie Jones?
No, Eddie Jones was fantastic.
The people don't know, but the kids, what do they say? The kids don't know about Eddie Jones.
That is a fantastic 2-way guy.
Who is similar to Eddie Jones in today's game? Who do you feel has that kind of like great defender, unique, good, but not great offensive player? I almost want to say he's in this like Jalen Johnson mold of brown belting a lot of things, but of course there's not a lot of 1-to-1 about their game. Jalen Johnson handles and passes a little better. Eddie Jones was a better defender. Who would you even try to connect to today's game for someone?
I actually think that's a really rare player archetype. Somebody who is going to extend the range, space the floor as that. A bit bigger of a guard. If I remember, he was like a solid 6'6" out there.
Yeah,
right?
he's like 6'5", 6'6", but he could shoot, and then the slashing, that ability to cut and finish and slash and get out in transition. I mean, he has some crazy dunks just in terms of that really horizontal, high speed attack the basket kind of finish.
And I think he had some good work in the mid range. Like he was able to back people down and hit little turnarounds a little bit there. So that's a really multi-talented guy. Oh man, I really don't know. I think Jalen Johnson's a really good call for that. Maybe like a more juiced up Mikal Bridges, like that sort of thing.
That's a really good one. Yeah, Noodles Bridges.
Noodles
yeah,
Bridges.
That's a really
we
good
talk
one.
About him much.
Someone said Derek White. I like that just in terms of just speed, defense, IQ. Eddie Jones is one of these guys that did a lot of really fun things. How did we get on Eddie Jones? Oh, because of the best backcourts, best backcourt trio where you had young Froby, Nick Van Exel. I think Nick Van Exel is the weakest player in that backcourt.
That crossover is iconic, though. He had some handles. He had some work out there. I don't know, man. I think that Pistons team, I think that's my number one.
Yeah. Isaiah, Joe D, and Vinny the Microwave Johnson is a little bit more one-dimensional, though. He doesn't have the same defensive level and offensive level as the other two.
That's fair. I feel like I've said this before, so I apologize if I've repeated this before, but there was a slew of Jordan documentaries, I feel like, that came out in like 93, and he had one called Michael Jordan's Playground. And in this, he was just talking up some of the guys he was playing with and stuff. The guy he said that played him the best out of anyone he had faced at that point, this is in 93, was Joe Dumars, right? He was like, no one defended me one-on-one quite like that dude out there. So I don't know if that's worth anything in this conversation, but that always stuck in my head. I find that very interesting for me.
For some reason, even though you've told that story on this podcast 4 times, I thought you were going to say Eddie Jones. I was so excited for you to talk about Eddie Jones.
Believe it or not, he didn't say Gerald Wilkins. He wasn't like, oh, that was actually the Jordan stopper when the Cavaliers got him. That dude played me so well.
That's a deep cut. The original Jordan stopper, Gerald Wilkins. What do we do now, Cody? Would you have any other topics you'd like to discuss? I have a couple questions for you before we end the show, if you'd like.
I have a point about Castle. I think something that we need to investigate in terms of like lists he's on. How many players could you put above him right now as being a better lob thrower?
Wow. Luka Doncic.
Yep.
Probably Trae Young, although I reserve all commentary on Trae. This is the exact same thing with LaMelo Ball, where if you ask me regrets about the top 25 draft, I'm like, maybe we just shouldn't even draft LaMelo Ball. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with Trae Young. I don't know what's going on with LaMelo Ball. I don't have the time or the desire to investigate it, but I'm pretty certain that the lob throwing is probably still there. So Luka, Trae Young, can we count Nikola Jokic in this or not?
I think we probably could. He's always just in any passing conversation you have, but maybe we reserve it just for wing players.
Okay. If it's just wing players,
what about Cade? He's got.
I don't know if I don't. Yeah, he's there. He's absolutely there. I don't know if I would say he's better than Castle though. Mm-hmm. Castle's ridiculously good. I'll tell you why. Because, and we'll probably have some detailed video content on Castle later in the season. I love watching him. I think he's a fascinating player. And if we were gonna do anything in that draft, I'm like, you should move Castle up. That guy is a machine. He has such, like Luka, has such control of his body and the physical position that he contains in the paint, that he can blend these lob passes deep in the paint at all different angles. So it's a jump pass. It's a little off the dribble. It looks like it's going to be a shot, but it's actually a lob. He's so good at that. And I think that's what makes him really skilled when it comes to throwing lobs, in addition to just being the first Spur to really realize, hey, when Wembanyama's near the basket, I'm going to throw it up and see what happens.
And I think some people, if you haven't had the pleasure to actually sit down and watch the Spurs, like, first of all, what are you doing? Don't do that to yourself. But obviously there's the great connection with Wemby that he has, but it's also with Cornette, right? Like he's showing it off with other bigs as well and setting them up. And the key part about being a good lob thrower is, are you actually throwing the lob in a way that is making the shot a lot easier for your teammate? Right? Like, obviously, there's the flash. You go back and you watch a lot of Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. I'm in my 90s historical stuff now. And some of those lobs sometimes are like,
this
that's
is
fun.
The granola. I'm telling
Jamal
you.
Crawford, like the under the leg throw up, Blake Griffin coming behind him. windmill in transition. Like that didn't actually make it easier. That's just really cool. But he actually sets up like the highest percentage shots that you can possibly get. And sometimes he surprises the guy throwing it to because he sees these just like, it's like the Star Wars run, the Top Gun Maverick run, where you have just like this little pinpoint pass, and he's so good at just like lofting it right in there.
Darius Garland, great lob passer.
Good call.
You know, the health possibly is dinging him here a little bit, but he's really fantastic at throwing lobs. I think it's hard to get players definitively better than Castle at this point. I mean, that's a pretty good list. Obviously, there are a couple other players here and there that have a connection with lob passes. I mean, we could get fancy and like pull up who throws the most lobs. Like Alperen Sengun, for instance, when he's in the lane, short roll, going to hit a Men Thompson coming out of the corner, or like a spin and lob. He's really good. But yeah, Castle's on the short list, I think.
If this had been like 2 years ago, Chris Middleton, really underrated lob thrower. Actually, I thought about Chris Middleton for a second when we were talking to Eddie Jones, but I think his defense is a little dialed down. The offense is a little bit better than what Jones brought.
Cody's randomly referenced the 2022 Buck. Can you feel it in the audience? Can you feel it coming?
We don't need to talk about the Bucks anymore. That's it. That's it for the Bucks. But I think the point with Castle though is like we're talking about this young player that has really high level skills. The athleticism stands out to you, the finishes and things like that. But that passing game, that can be so hard to develop. And he has it so well at this point. And I think there's some really clear fatty pieces of meat there that you can chop off in terms of it. Like you go to that OKC series and he had a couple pretty lazy. He had one entry pass that ended up being a pretty lazy turnover and a couple other errant passes that go out there. So he has some stuff to clean up there, but the vision and willingness to throw it, that's really, really hard to teach and develop. And he has that. So I think these are some of the reasons that I'm just so extremely, and I think you are too, so extremely excited about Castle and where he's going to end up as a player.
Let's take an audience question. Here's one. Are you worried about Jaylen Williams, that's J-Dub's, efficiency? Are you worried about Jaylen Williams' efficiency?
Can I actually change it? Because I don't actually answer questions on this podcast.
Are you gonna ask a question, or are you just gonna completely change it to a new topic?
If I'm gonna ask this listener, you better respond quickly enough for us.
Pluribus. What may or may not be happening by Cody. Yes, go ahead.
So I'm more concerned about some of the on-off numbers with J-Dub over the last two seasons. And if you include both this season and last season, their net rating is like 6 points worse when he's on the court versus when he's off the court, right? Now, obviously, this is the team that he was an integral part to their championship run. Second or third best player on the team. He's still coming into shape with that wrist injury. But I don't know. I as high as I am on J-Dub and as much as I love him, there are still some questions about it. But if we're on like the injury concern scale, I'm a lot more concerned about Darius Garland's toe than the wrist. But I'm at least watching the wrist and how much that might impact his efficiency.
No, the spirit of the question is a multi-year question, right? Because it includes the fact that last year, whether we're talking about the wrist or not, he had a decline in his shooting. And as a result of that, a decline in his efficiency. So if you go back to 2024, Jaylen Williams is 22 points at true shooting. That's 4% ahead of the league, right? If you go back to last year, as the three-point shooting falls off, maybe because of that wrist, he's at 24 dead average with the league. If you come into this year, yes, it's a smaller sample, limited number of games and things like that. He's only played 421 minutes in about 14 or so games as of recording this, but he's down to 21 points, minus 6% worse than the league in his true shooting number. So I think the spirit of the question is more of a trend. Like, did he start with fluke when he was younger, that kind of thing?
I'm glad you corrected me, because halfway through my answer, I'm like, crap, what was the actual question? Was it about the wrist? So I was hoping I was going to land the plane with the wrist analysis, but no, that's some good stuff. And I think I talked about it a little bit last year in terms of how grimy the OKC offense can be. J-Dub falls back on a lot of these no-pass, mid-range pull-up type possessions than I would like to see for a team that has a little bit more offensive talent and can spray it around a little bit. So I think there's some shot diet things that concern me. But when he gets out in transition, where he really puts his head down and gets to the rim, I feel a lot more confident. But I think he falls in love with some tough shots a little bit more than than I would like to see. So in that sense, yeah, I'm a little concerned about it because I want him to grow out of it and not be one of those guys that just like has that in his game for his entire career.
Yeah, I don't know where I land on this in terms of a 1 to 10 scale. It is a little bit concerning, but I also feel like he's coming off an injury, and this may be just a function of that injury from last year, and right now he may be returning and reintegrating from that injury. Excuse me. The shooting, Cody, is the thing that I'm most interested about. What is he as an actual outside shooter? I'm not really worried about anything else with Jaylen Williams. Jaylen Williams just went through a championship run as the second best player on his team, and in the finals showed up in big ways, in big moments, when the force of the game was ramped up, when the intensity, the physicality, and the responsibility of scheme was at its highest in the NBA. Indiana was a phenomenal team. They were a phenomenal team. And Denver was a championship level team. And Minnesota was a solid team, and they just went through them like a knife through butter. So I am not worried about everything else with Jaylen Williams. The ball handling, the passing. I think he can improve in some of the finishing stuff, getting downhill. I think there's still room for him to get better. He's so young, but the shooting is really the factor for me. Are you a 38% three-point shooter, or are you a 33% three-point shooter? That's kind of my big question for him.
So I'm going to vamp for like 5 seconds here as I pull up this final number, but I'm just looking back in the last couple of years of J-Dub and his wide open 3-point attempts. So if you look at this season, he's shooting 45% on wide open 3-point attempts. I forgot what the volume is, but
it's like 10 threes or something.
It's not a big sample.
Yeah.
Last year, 36% on wide open 3-point attempts. And 2 seasons ago, when we saw his best 3-point numbers, 48, nearly 49%
Thank you.
on wide open 3-point attempts. So that's a really weird and huge gap. It's like looking at Tim Duncan's free throw percentage throughout his career, and it's tough to really triangulate it. So yeah, I think that's the key number to be tracking in terms of his efficiency going forward.
Yeah, the totality of that for the record is in the 73rd percentile over the long term, over the last 3 years, and he's an 85% free throw shooter. So that's where I'm really intrigued. Like, is this something that you're legitimately a really good shooter, or is this going to actually be a weakness in your game, and therefore that cascades to have downstream effects on other parts of your game that make other parts of your offensive game a little less effective than what we would love from a player in his position? That's where I'm at. To support us, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's the best way to do it. That's where we have our stats board. We have our players board, team board, changes from last year, all kinds of things that we reference to make these podcasts and videos. We have another, also we get extra content in terms of videos. We have extra on, I love this Spurs-Thunder series that we watch. So not only do we have a full video on the Spurs and how they break down and kind of are a real matchup problem for Oklahoma City, but we get the Wemby. We have an extra for members on the Wemby Chet chess match that's going on behind the scenes that I love every time. I just can't get enough of it, Cody, every time these teams get together. Patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. Also, if you're on YouTube, you can just sign up and you get to follow along live in the audience and ask us questions and distract us with pluribus comments and things like that. So it's a fun thing to do. Cody, now that we've done the basketball talk, do you have something else for us today after that was your week? What's on your mind?
Well, I'll tell you what, I kind of foreshadowed we were going to talk something at the end of this podcast, and you didn't seem particularly interested.
So why are you calling me out?
We're taking the exit ramp.
What's happening right now? Why are you calling me out?
It's the end of the year, right? And so I just want to ask, outside of basketball, outside of the NBA, do you have any, like, what is a top end recommendation of any other kind of media that you encountered in 2025? Could be a movie, a book, an album, a song, an article you read. I don't know. Anything that you're like, oh man, this really stuck with me. It doesn't even have to have come out this year. You just maybe encountered it for the first time this year. But do you have any big recommendations for it?
Wow. You're really putting me on the spot right now.
That's the point of the episode.
I know, but mostly because I don't really have a concept of time thanks to basketball. So I don't remember what came out this year or last year, or frankly, what I watched this year or last year. I have watched Pluribus. I did like Pluribus.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Is that a
think Apple.
recommendation?
I only recommend things based on the customized preferences of the people. I have to tailor the recommendation to the audience member. I mean, maybe people don't like that kind of show, or I don't even know what you'd call it. It's sci-fi like. You haven't seen Pluribus, right?
I have not. No.
Okay. What about you? What's your, if it can't be a book, if it has to be a movie or a TV show or a piece of music?
It can't be a book.
No, I'm restricting you because you'll say a book that I've never heard of.
Oh, I had a book queued up here. Maybe I'll sneak it in at the end so my literary heads out there can seek something out. I guess I'm just like everyone else, Ben, just following the crowd on this one. I think One Battle After Another is right now I have like 3 5-star movies from the 2020s. And One Battle After Another to me was like an instantaneous five. I watched it. I was vibrating the whole time, finished it. And my immediate thought was like, I wish I could just run that back. I wish I had the time to run that thing back immediately. I'm
going to warn anyone listening who wants to get out of here fast. This may go for a few more minutes because I have to ask Cody a serious question.
Ooh.
What are your 3 5-star movies of the 2020s? This is almost as exciting as Stefan Castle and Dylan Harper talk.
Okay. So my 3 5-star movies.
Yes, 3 5-star movies.
I would say one, I don't hear people talk about, like, it's very much lost to any kinds of conversations, and it makes me really sad because I genuinely think it's like an absolute masterpiece. I think Pig, the movie Pig, starring Nicolas Cage.
You love Pig. Yeah, it's a beautiful movie.
That is a movie I've watched multiple times. I tear up certain points. I pull up some of the like clips and it's so clever. It's smart. It has a lot of resonating scenes that I think, I don't know. I've just never seen a movie pull off some of the things that it tries to pull off. And I think it's a really fascinating test case in that. And the other one is a movie that was super celebrated. And I feel like it's getting less and less celebrated by critics. And I will not have this, Ben. I'm going to start a movie podcast just to celebrate it more. And that is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Okay.
That movie is near, it's not, I don't know. That movie is so good. And I know it won all kinds of awards and things, but if you go on Reddit, that site that you talked about earlier being such a pleasant little place, people are like, oh, people are going to forget about Everything Everywhere. It's a fake best picture, blah, blah, blah. No, that movie rocks.
It's not for everyone, though. That's the thing. That's one of my favorite movies, but I can understand why it would miss certain people. Yeah.
But that's the point of any good media. Like if you take a big swing and you're going to be like a best picture thing, that's generally not one of these like crowd pleasing, we're going to go to the movies and, you know, you're going to get every single person, every demographic, every age group and things like that. And they're going to like it. You're going to come in with a really strong point of view and a really clear message you're going to try and say, and you're going to communicate it in your way. And it's not going to be for everyone. And I think that's okay because a 5-star doesn't have to be a 5-star for everybody.
Okay, yes, that's fair. But I do think that there's certain subject matter that is covered in art and certain themes that are covered in art that are going to be less generalizable across culture, across age and demographic, and things of that nature, right? Like your experiences are different. And so certain movies are going to be a little bit more mainstream in terms of everyone having a good time and enjoying the takeaway and the concept, and other movies are going to be a little bit more polarizing. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that fair? Does that fit into your
I just feel
lecture criteria?
Some of the big takeaways from the movie are so generalizable, right? Like everyone, like I shouldn't say everyone. You never know people's situation.
Hold on. Don't do any spoilers.
I wasn't going to spoil anything.
Okay. I have a big crow. What do you call it when you have a stick in the mud? What do you know?
A critique? A criticism?
No, I have something stuck in my craw. That's what I'm
there.
We
are. Something's grinding your gears.
I'm grinding my gears. I don't like when I'm listening to media and all of a sudden on a podcast, someone will just start spoiling a film from 10 or 20 years ago because they're like, oh, the statute of limitations is over on spoilers. Well, if I haven't seen the film and I haven't heard of it and you're introducing it to me, then why is the statute of limitation over? I don't like that. Don't spoil this film.
Is there no statute of limitations? Like if we started talking about, like, you say an M. Night Shyamalan movie from the 90s?
I think there's none. There's none. I think there are certain things that proliferate into the pop culture that people will know the reference of. Luke, I am your father, right? You can't get away from that. But that doesn't mean you need to explain what it is. I see dead people. You don't have to explain what that is. Maybe someone halfway through a certain movie will realize this is the movie, right? But B, I think if you are what Citizen Kane is, 83 years old. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to just be like, just because Citizen Kane is old, I'm going to have to tell you about Rosebud or whatever.
What do you count as a spoiler? Does it have to just be the ending, or can you just not talk about any clear like plot details of a particular movie? Like if a movie takes a turn, like maybe an hour in, and it's like 3 hours long, right? Can you not talk about like that turn it might make?
You're talking to someone who doesn't even like watching trailers, because trailers these days are cut as mini movie. Trailers used to be cut as true teasers. So I think one of the great trailers ever is the Alien trailer, which is just the sound of like, I think it's the sound. Is it the sound of someone breathing and no one can hear you scream in space? And then like the egg and the A comes up and then it says coming in July. That's a teaser. You're like, oh my God, what is going on there? Trailers today are like a cottage industry of making a small 3-minute film. So I think the trailer itself goes too far. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
The initial Interstellar trailer, it was like in black and white, and there's like a voiceover about mankind going out into the world, and there's like an old school rocket ship going into the air. That's an awesome trailer because it gives away nothing. I like going away from a trailer knowing absolutely nothing going into it. What are do you have any recent 5-star movies you want to bring up here?
There was a movie that I saw this week that I loved. And again, it will not be for everyone because it's a Taiwanese movie. And it has themes that are probably, they can be universal, are not going to immediately gravitate toward those groups that I discussed earlier as audience recipients. The name of this movie is The Left-Handed Girl. That's what it is. Cody, I can't remember the names of movies I say, but also I did like One Battle After Another quite a bit as well. I saw that recently.
Okay. I'm looking up The Left-Handed Girl. Oh, it came out in 25. Like this is a recent movie.
It's a contemporary film, Cody. Yes. I keep up with the Joneses when it comes to these kinds of things, or at least I try. I definitely do not. You had your 5-star movies. I like your pick for 5-star movies of the 2020s. I would add Dune. I love Dune.
See, I was always a little bit, I was cooler on that. The first Dune wasn't my favorite. I was a lot more on board with the second one, but there's something about it that like keeps my excitement down compared to a lot of other people, because I know you and other people in our basketball world are very, very excited about it. And I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good.
I'm a sucker for that kind of world building. Also, I warned everyone that this would be an extremely long post show once we opened up this Pandora's box. All right, that was a lot of fun. That was another great year. I want to thank everybody for listening to us this year and supporting us, and especially our Patreon subscribers. They're always incredibly supportive, asking a lot of questions, a lot of great thoughts, a lot of great input. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to say, but it's really fun to be able to get to do this with you every week.
Oh, that's very sweet, and I agree. This is one of the highlights, is being able to come here and just talk some hoops, and people bringing in some cool perspectives in the comments, and anyone that interacts with us in a positive way that just promotes like fun basketball, knowledge and excitement and stuff. That's what it's all about, Ben. Just to sneak it in, Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land from 2021 is one of my all-time favorite novels that I read this last year, and I think everyone should go read it.
As you were saying that, I was like, Cody came up with a movie I've never heard of. This is so incredible. Of course, it was a book. Fantastic. Perfect. Chef's kiss. No notes. Thanks as always for listening all the way through on maybe our longest post show ever. Hope you had a great year. Hope you have a happy new year. And what do I say? Oh, and of course, I hope you are having a great day.